Toby and the Stout Gentleman is my favorite Railway series story, at least in the TV series. That's largely because of the lovingly crafted scenery and the good use of music, or lack thereof later on. We almost never see these places reused, so for this one story it's like we've been completely cut off from the rest of this world. There's just something really isolating and even atmospheric about this one, and I think that elevates it above most Thomas episodes as a work of art. It's always stood out to me, and I've only come to appreciate it more as I get older. Tobias and the Half-Pariah is a Thomas fan film, the likes of which I've never seen. No, really, it's probably the strangest thing I've ever seen on this site, and I don't just mean that because strange things happen in it, or because the characters behave strangely at times, but it's strange to me in that I have no idea how I feel about it. There are moments now and then when I've managed to sort out the jumbled mess of feelings I have about this project, times when I feel like I can't stand it, and times where I could swear that I like it. And then I remember something to the contrary as the movie continues to bewilder me. Warning, there will be spoilers. This thing has been out for a while now, and if you clicked on this video out of genuine interest in what I'm talking about, chances are you already know of this film and have probably even seen it already. If not, well, I'm happy I managed to get a little more exposure. Another thing, this is something that Tynes, the man behind this 2-hour-long production, has dedicated years of work to, finishing it in college of all places. He's also looking to get into filmmaking for real, so hey, good on you, man, you're going places. That said, I have a lot to say about this magnum opus of yours, and not all of it is kind. Still, I have this personal approval to do this, so here we go. I also feel the need to address something I'm sure the fans of this film are bound to bring up about artistic freedom, and that I shouldn't tell people how to write fanfiction or whatever, and well, fine, yeah. Tynes and anyone else who dedicates time to this sort of thing has the freedom to make stories about whatever they want. However, that has to go both ways, and as long as I'm not actively impeding the creator of this film in any way, I'm free to say whatever I want about it. That said, I'll try not to be too harsh. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. I, like many other children, was obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine, and I continue to love the franchise in some form to this day. Not all of it, of course, but on occasion, when something special comes along, more often than not fan-made these days. I have my problems with the series and what it's become nowadays. The engines move around on their own, their crews act like mindless robots and just do whatever the engines want, the characters grow dumber over time and keep making the same mistakes over and over again, only to say sorry and have everything wrapped up with a neat little bow at the end, made all the more annoying by the extremely overused 3-strike formula in every episode that made the series downright unbearable after a while, and the people making these shows basically having to shoehorn 5 or 6 interchangeable blend new characters into every season who don't do anything, and most of which only appear in one episode, only to never be seen again, all for the purpose of keeping the series alive by selling toys. If the railway in the old books had as many crazy accidents happen as a TV series has, they would have had to close down ages ago. These guys have essentially told the same story 1,000 times, though there does seem to be a light at the end of the tunnel. Don't get me wrong, I like a few of these characters from what I've seen. They have their uses, and a lot of the issues I brought up seem like they're being addressed slowly but surely. For example, a lot of old faces have returned after being neglected for like 7 years. The writers have said they never wanted to stop writing stories about these classic characters. It's just that the higher-ups were always breathing down their necks and forcing them to constantly create new characters that didn't matter just to sell another freaking toy. I'll always have some lingering fondness for this stuff, however trite it can be. But being a much more discerning adult with critical thinking skills, now I look back on things like that stupid Magic Railroad movie and wonder how I could ever have convinced myself as a child that I was watching something enjoyable. Anyway, enough rambling from me. Let's get moving. Hold on a sec. Sorry about that, folks. I seem to have mixed these clips up with a horror game. We open with beautiful shots of the title character, Toby the Tram Engine, on his little railway that closed down in 1951. To me, this is the best part of the movie. The music is great, the delivery is great, the shots are great, everything about these opening scenes is stunningly crafted, and there are lovely little moments like this.
Thank you.
Moments that put a smile on my face and make me think this is going to be great. Before long, though, the story begins diverging into its own little timeline, an alternate history, if you will. Toby's meeting with Sir Charles Topham Hatt goes differently than it did in the stories, and while it caught me off guard, we still got some nice scenes out of this. You know, I'm all for some originality. Let's see where this goes.
I don't know if I'll be able to...
Toby. No excuses.
Okay, so Toby arrives on Sodor and meets Thomas. By now you'd probably notice that the pacing of this film is pretty slow, but that's not a bad thing for me. I wouldn't say it's downright plotting, I'd say it just feels like older movies where the dialogue carried you from scene to scene, rather than crazy action sequences, though we will have some of those. This was just another thing that made me really like this movie at first. We get a few more interesting bits and the two engines go to a quarry on Thomas's branch line.
I don't know what the Fat Controller hopes to gain from all this, but all I can say is, it better be damn worth it.
Right.
So yeah, the characters swear in this movie. I don't particularly mind that as long as it doesn't feel cheesy and forced. I can see someone like Thomas saying something like this in that sort of work environment when kids aren't around to hear him, sure. But there's a lot of scenes later on where I could swear harsh language is thrown in there just to add more drama to a scene, or make it appear more mature and grown up than it is. And I hate that when anyone does it. But anyway, that's not my issue with this scene.
Now these trucks have been sitting here for God knows how long, and no engine has ever been able to move them. And we need all the stone we can get.
And you want me to move them?
Okay, why? Why has this line of trucks been left here for, as they put it, ages? If they really haven't been able to find an engine light yet strong enough to move all these at once in years or even months, why hasn't anyone in this quarry thought of uncoupling some of them and just moving a few of them at a time? Sure, it might be a hassle and it would probably take all day, but that would be it. Boom! Problem solved. But even that isn't my beef with this scene, and subsequently the entire story. You have to understand what I was slowly beginning to. That I was approaching this with a wrong mindset, expecting a fair amount of realism and competence like in the Railway series novels. And this is where things start to get weird.
Now what?
So yeah, Toby is super strong, like a superhero. He's also super fast, as we'll see in a little bit. We get some cliche new kid banter with Gordon being a bigger jerk than he usually is, and Toby being all too happy to see him get his comeuppance the next day when the express engine breaks down. Toby, of all engines, is called to pull Gordon, and the entire express. Starting on a hill, no less. And yeah, this is where things get really weird.
It was exhilarating, powerful, unstoppable.
So Toby blows everyone away with his performance, and he's reassigned to be the Northwest Railway's new express engine. I find it hilarious and nobody finds it strange that such an old, small engine like Toby is apparently the strongest, fastest engine in the world. Why doesn't anyone think to look into his history, find out who made him and how he could be so powerful? Why doesn't anyone think to poke around his insides, find out what this thing is running on? Given something we'll learn about Tobias later on, you'd think that surely his driver, fireman, or someone would have noticed something was off when mending or cleaning or, heck, even just refueling him. But hey, I'm making a mistake by expecting realism in a story about talking trains, huh? So, Toby's the talk of the town, and Gordon is understandably jealous. During the night before Toby's big day, he jammed the points down the main line to divert Toby onto Thomas's branch line, nearly causing him to crash into an oncoming Percy. Though such an accident certainly wasn't Gordon's intention, he was just trying to make Toby late. But still, this is really dangerous. I just have to wonder how he convinced his crew to sneak him out in the middle of the night to do this. This would never happen on any railway. But even that's small potatoes, because this is where things start getting really weird. You wanna know when another piece of the ever slowly waning Thomas lover in me died just a little more? It wasn't Toby being super strong or the general lack of realism, I'm fine with all that. It was this shit.
You're late.
Sorry, Montague. I had a lot to deal with.
And boy, what a perfect little microcosm of how I feel about this entire movie this one scene is. We got these cool panning shots to set things up, and then BAM! Demon-possessed Duck. Duck! Duck is the bad guy in this movie. I'm not even gonna call him that, let's just call him Monty. We'll get back to this later. So, Toby narrowly averts a train wreck and Goran is banished from the island. Guess this means his crew are out of a job, unless he can get assigned to work with another engine. On the mainland, Goran is approached by two diesels who want to introduce him to their superior, Monty. If you're wondering what a steam engine is doing ordering diesels around, again, we'll get to that later. Time for some fight scenes, I guess?
Toby!
I see it!
Go, Toby! Ah!
Henrietta!
I always liked Mavis. Gordon joins Monty and takes Henrietta to him, proving his worth. Using Henrietta as a hostage, he gets Toby to come to the harbor where Monty is waiting to see him. And it's here that we find out why Toby's the most powerful engine, like, ever, and how it's possible for us to have a story where Duck is a bad guy. A couple of decades before this story begins, Monty was a diesel. Yes, Duck was a diesel. And like a mob boss, he got a lot of other diesels to respect him, and he still has this following after being rebuilt as a tank engine. Anyway, Toby used to live here, and he happened to be on Monty's track one night when the diesel was visiting the harbor, and both engines were wrecked. Monty was cannibalized so his parts could be used for an experiment to create a steam engine diesel engine hybrid. His parts were put into Toby, making this little tram the strongest engine ever made. Toby, or rather Tobias, lost his memory and was sent to his little railway in the countryside to work there, and instead of just making Monty a smaller diesel or finding him some replacement parts, they made him a completely different engine. What a twist! Okay, look, as dumb as it might sound to some people at first, it's not the whole steam diesel hybrid part of this that gets me. Believe it or not, people have tried doing this in real life. There have been several prototype hybrid engines in the decades that followed the rise of diesel engines. I'm just not aware of such a thing existing in the 30s, and like this. And hey, if they wanted to make this super powerful hybrid monster, why not make two? Couldn't they just as easily do this to Monty? But no, they never did. This whole thing is just so strange. I'd like to talk about characterization for a bit, because I do like some of it. There's a lot of scenes where Toby and Henrietta are just talking, and some of them are pretty nice. She keeps him going, though the pep talks do get a little repetitious after a while. Toby's characterization overall is pretty good, if a little heavy at times. He feels like a freak and doesn't trust the other engines for a while, thinking he's too different for them to understand him. Given what's just been revealed to us, I guess he's not wrong in thinking that, though I really don't think it should matter. Even when the other engines do open up to him and welcome him in, he has a tendency to assume the worst of their intentions. I don't really see Toby acting this way, but it does make for an interesting character in its own right. I really like how he's introduced at the beginning of the movie. He sounds like an elderly man reading his memoirs to future generations so they may hear his tale. Thomas is characterized perfectly throughout the whole thing. He's not a perfect person, but he's a good friend for it. Gordon has baggage. He feels unappreciated by the other engines, and well, that's why he turns against them. I do find his portrayal pretty heavy-handed, but then again, almost everything in this film is. Eventually, when Henrietta tells him how much the coaches and passengers love him after all, he does realize the error of his ways and makes peace with Toby right in time to be killed by the evil diesels, while Toby and Henrietta escape the harbor. Whoops. And then there's Duck and Oliver. These two villains? These are your villains? Oliver doesn't even have some crazy backstory like Monty. He's just an ordinary steam engine who's there and helping this freak for some reason. I do like some of their banter, with Oliver clearly being the smart one here, but did it have to be these characters? Everything about this universe is just alien to me. Many of the other engines that we wouldn't see until years after Toby's arrival are there well before he is, and we even see some engines who feel even more out of place, like Lady. Though I guess you could say these are just cameos. But you know, this is an alternate take on the Thomas lore, so I can see that this is just nitpicking, but the actual characters, their origins, and even just the way they act are so inconsistent. Tynes has somehow managed to create something even more bizarre and otherworldly than the Magic Railroad and the Dark Age of the TV series combined. Not worse, just even stranger. By this point I think it's become pretty clear that this movie just isn't for me, but we've gone too far into this to turn back now, and so have they. Toby makes it back to the roundhouse and convinces the other edges to forgive and honor Gordon and fight the approaching army of diesels coming to take over the railway. Yeah, sure.
Hold your ground.
I can't believe everyone's drivers are just going along with this. I mean, holy crap! You can see them through the windows in some of these shots. Even if you say the engines can move around on their own, which is stupid, heck, that just makes it even crazier that the crews would stick around for this train wreck. And then... You know, I'm sorry I keep coming back to this, and I realize I'm not watching this with the right frame of mind, but all I see right now is a Fat Controller and some board of directors strangling themselves over what's happening. I mean, they had the foresight to evacuate people from the sound of it, but this could be avoided just by diverting all these engines onto sidings or away from here. Look at all this property damage. Why is no one trying to stop this? Someone call in the troops! Bring in the artillery! The trains are taking over!
All right.
We get one last chase scene. Money captures Henrietta and holds her hostage, and you can see everything that happens in this scene coming from a mile away. Don't come any closer. I'll drop it. I'll do it. You're bluffing. I'm not bluffing. Please don't do this. I'm begging you. Get him. Not today. Who knows? Please don't kill me. This is my right. Shut up. Don't ever accept it, you know. Yes, they will. These are my friends. Look, I'll let you live if you just stay the hell away and never come back. Wait for it and... It's my right! So, when engines like Thomas die, their faces disappear and they revert to being ordinary real-life engines. I knew it! A lot of this writing is corny as can be. Again, some of it is really good, but in striving to make this the most epic Thomas fan film ever, Tynes has reenacted so many scenes I've seen in so many action movies that just blend together after a while. So much raving about arrogance and weakness and strength of will, and I've heard it all before.
But he has no constitution, no force of will. He's weak!
The only thing that's missing from this scene is some guy with a gun pointed at Henrietta, waiting for Harold to take them away. I do appreciate that the steam engines and diesel engines make peace at the end and start working together, but... I don't know. There's other stuff that goes into this, people. Paperwork. Contracts. I'm done.
There was a time when I didn't know if my place in the world was real. But now I do. And I had a new life ahead of me. Now, I was ready to seize that life. forge the way.
So that was it. Before I share my final thoughts, I want to make it clear to people that I don't hate this movie, even though I've been so critical of it. I don't think I can even scrounge up the chutzpah to dislike it. It's just so alienating, and I think it's kind of a reflection of a big part of the Thomas fan community. In my endeavors to find like-minded people to reach out to, I've seen a lot of fanfics that were much more offensive than this could ever be. And I'm not telling Tynes to stop making movies like this. This is a masterpiece. Kinda. A lot of his fans are indeed calling it just that, a masterpiece. But I don't think it is for me in the same way that it is for them. I mean, look at some of these shots. Look at how beautifully put together this whole thing is. Look at what this guy was able to do with Train Simulator. I can tell you I won't be making anything on this level anytime soon. The angles, the music, the voice acting.
No, 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 no! It is my engine! Mine! I must be the harbored engine!
Well overblown, has such clear passion injected into it. Even the fight scenes and chase scenes, as silly as they are, make great use of the environment and even the rolling stock. As needlessly dramatic and over the top as I think the writing is, some of the more quiet scenes are quite powerful. There are things I really like about this movie. It's just when looking at it as one big thing that my brain stops. On a purely technical level, and even in the way the story is told to us, this is a masterpiece. This is something special. It's just the premise that I think is overwhelmingly dumb and stops me from enjoying this as much as other people do. But you know what? I think Tynes may well be on the road to a great career in filmmaking. I hope he gets to live his dream and be part of a true masterpiece on the silver screen someday. And you know what? I'm not gonna knock on anyone's door and make them stop writing Thomas fanfics, but when it comes to some of the more colorful takes on the series, I have to ask, why? Why make a story where Thomas and friends meet an actual living T-Rex that's somehow big enough to eat them, and they have to find its baby and reunite the two dinosaurs? That's kiddie crap. Why film a reenactment of Total Drama Island with your wooden trains? Why write a crossover that totally doesn't make sense and doesn't seem to contribute anything to the characters? Why pair up a train with a horse? I like Thomas. I like Twilight Sparkle. Doesn't mean I want to see him stick his funnel up her plot. What the hell is wrong with some of these people? Well, nothing, I guess. They can do whatever they want. But while being a child at heart with autism, like many another Thomas lover, I just can't relate to this stuff. And honestly, I'm kinda glad I don't. I know that sounds incredibly pompous and makes me sound like I have a superiority complex, but I guess what bothers me about this stuff is that it doesn't feel like these people have any desire to be respectful to the characters or their world. They just had these crazy ideas pop up into their heads, and they decided to act out these fantasies with Thomas characters. I feel like these characters are being wrongfully used when they do this, and I'd even say this is shameful to a degree. I don't see how people can claim to love these characters when they bash their portrayals in the TV series one moment and degrade them like this in the next, and I can't fathom why they enjoy doing it. But I don't need to. That's just me speaking from the comfort of my own personal bubble. Still, I find a lot of this stuff quite disrespectful to Wilbert Awdry and what he created for his kids. A big part of what made this film in particular so baffling to me was, of course, my watching it with a wrong mindset. In some aspects, I think it's respectful enough to the characters, all things considered. Some of them anyway. I do get a sense of love from this. It's mainly the lack of realism that gets me. I can't help it. When I was a kid, I liked Thomas because it had talking trains, and those were cool to me for reasons I can't articulate. But the reason is stuck with me in some small capacity to this day. What's allowed me to continue to enjoy it as an adult is something much deeper than that, or even nostalgia, and I can't say that for all representations of Thomas and his world, that's for sure. The older stories were realistic. Yes, the trains had faces and they could talk, but they were still trains, and they had the limitations that real-life trains do and how they work. Every breakdown, every collision, every fudge-up was based on things that have happened in real life. Heck, the Skarloey and Arlesdale railways were based on real railways, and these engines correspond with their engine fleet counterparts in real life. That's the draw of it for me. It's why I haven't been able to enjoy the toy commercial that the TV series has become for years, and it's why I'm starting to come back to it lately. Sorta. You know why? Because this approach makes the engines unique. Of course, a big part of it is their personalities, but because the world around them is otherwise so unremarkable, it's easier to imagine it being a real place. It essentially is our world, just with talking trains. and even that seems mostly inconsequential. And because of that, I can look at that and think, wow, what if all this were real? What if engines could talk? What if Soda was a real place and I could go there and meet these characters and talk to them? That would be so cool! Again, this is the little boy in me talking. But that's what gives Thomas an edge over Chuggington and all these other generic, hey, let's put a face on a car or a plane or something kids shows that just blend together. In most of these shows, these characters and the world around them are wacky and surreal, which is fine, but I can't relate to that. I'm not supposed to, but Thomas has that appeal. Once the engines start moving on their own and doing whatever they want, you open the floodgates for all sorts of crap. People have come to me saying, but in the old stories, the engines don't have enough agency and it gets boring after a while. They don't act, they're acted upon. Something is always happening to them. It's always some incompetent signalman diverting them onto the wrong line, or something bumping into them causing an accident. You can make the stories more exciting when the engines actually do things like actual characters. Guys, it's important to have restrictions when telling a story. It's essential to have a set of ground rules and limitations to say that certain things just don't happen. That way, it takes some genuine cleverness on the writer's part to cope with unexpected yet believable ways to work around those limits while still somehow fitting in the established confines of the story. I know that might make writing fanfictions a little less fun, but you gotta at least try, cause that's what'll really make your work stand out as a cut above the rest. It helps things make sense. It's good to have some restrictions. It's even good to be able to point out something as a plot hole, because that means you've done a good job setting up your world, and the audience has a good enough grasp of how things work in it to realize when something is off. And it's this that makes for great storytelling, especially for things like Thomas. And I can think of no better testament to this than Wild Nor'Wester's Sodor the Early Years and Sodor the Modern Years. While his stories may not have quite the same cinematic panache that this movie does, he adds so much realism to this world that it can be a pretty big eye-opener at times. You see the world around these engines constantly change and outgrow them more by the day. You see how lucky they are to be here, how precious and invaluable they truly are. And you get a stronger sense of just how much they have to lose in stories like Winds of Change and Darkest Hour. Usually when things go wrong in these stories, it's more of a matter of fact and not because of an evil engine that wants to take over the railway or something like that. The engines use their wits and strength of character to get out of a jam, not some crazy latent powers or the ability to go wherever they want. And this is what makes these stories exciting, suspenseful, engaging, powerful. And yes, the engines actually do things. Search engines, Harvest Season, Douglas the Brave. I could name so many examples where the engines shine despite their limited autonomy, if not for it. Imagine how much less tension there would be if they could just do whatever they wanted and nothing was out of their control. You wouldn't think, oh, how are they going to get out of this? Because of course they will. Don't worry about your story not being epic enough. Don't worry about being mundane. Just make it nice and charming. You know what happens when you give one guy the free rein to do whatever he wants? You know what comes out when you basically throw your hands in the air and say, anything goes? You get stupid crap like the prequels. And yeah, I kinda like those movies, but that doesn't make them good. You shouldn't have to resort to crazy things like super engines, or bad engines, or swear words, or speeches, or make things as dramatic and epic and over the top as possible to make a good story, because a good story that does not make. Ideally, you should be able to do that without all of that stuff. Because if you do rely on that stuff too much, then it just evolves into kid crap. That said, I don't think Tobias and the Half-Pariah is kid crap, and I'm certainly not lowering it to the level of the Phantom Menace. Of course not, it's something else entirely. There is a lot I like here, in spite of everything. It has its moments. I can see what Tynes was going for. I can see he was doing his damnedest to make something amazing. Well, you certainly made something, and I see that a lot of people love it. I'm not going to tell them that they're wrong for enjoying the parts I didn't. It's just not for me. But it was fun to watch at least once. There's a lot of stuff I skimmed over in this review, so if you guys are interested in this film, go ahead and watch it. I'll post a link to it in an annotation right here. Sorry I derailed this review to talk about another series altogether, but hey, Tynes voices Percy in Wild Nor'Wester's stories, you know? These guys work together. Personally, I would like to see them take it a step further and make a movie together. Just imagine it, something with a scope and panache of Tynes sweeping shots and music with a story written by Danny. That would be the greatest. So what was the whole point of this review? I don't know. I guess I've had some of these thoughts mulling around for years, and this was what it took for me to articulate how I feel. I've seen the worst that Thomas can be, and I just want to see it elevated above that. Anyway, I know this was an unusual video for me to make, and I'm sorry it ended up being an advertisement for sort of the modern years, but the timing of it all just worked out that way. After sitting through this whole thing, I just had to review it and let it all out, you know. Tynes, I hope you're okay with this. I hope I wasn't too unforgiving. I did get some enjoyment out of your story, however crazy it is to me. Toodles, man.